I am a 26-year-old individual originally from a quaint town in Ohio. I have now made the sunny city of San Diego my home. Life was progressing smoothly until I found myself in urgent need of a new roommate. My search led me to Jane, a 23-year-old Floridian who, like me, was a newcomer to the city. I discovered her through numerous CRAIGSLIST ads. Intrigued by her unconventional personality, I decided to take a risk, hoping that her unique character would bring some excitement to my life. Little did I know that this decision would plunge me into an unending nightmare. Jane moved into our apartment, and it didn't take long for me to realize that she was peculiar. She had an uncanny ability to completely disregard personal boundaries. She would rummage through my refrigerator without asking and consume my food. "Hey, do you mind if I grab a snack?" Jane asked, already halfway through my leftovers. She thought it was perfectly acceptable to use my laptop in my room when I wasn't there, often spending hours on plentyoffish.com with no regard for my privacy. To add to the annoyance, she had a habit of barging into my room at the most inconvenient times and yelling out the most absurd things. "Sorry to bother you, but have you seen my purple socks?" Jane shouted as she burst into my room while I was working. All this happened within the first week itself. As time passed, Jane's strange behavior only escalated. She began to associate with some questionable characters she met at her workplace, Subway. This group included her boyfriend, who had just been released from prison, and his 4 friends. They weren't genuinely interested in Jane, they were merely amused by her naivety and the fact that she would buy things for them. Their presence only exacerbated her eccentric behavior, as she was constantly seeking their approval and attention. One of Jane's habits that bothered me the most was her tendency to leave the window slightly open. She explained that she kept losing her keys. I had no idea that this careless habit would lead to a more distressing event, making me feel unsafe in my own home. One day, I returned home to find my apartment in shambles. My TV, laptop, my roommate's smaller TV, the wedding dress I was selling on eBay for my aunt, a stack of DVDs, and even my prescription glasses were all missing. As panic set in, I called Jane, who had just returned home herself. "Jane, have you seen what happened?" "Everything is gone," I exclaimed as I surveyed the mess. Instead of showing concern or support, she accused me of stealing her damaged laptop and immediately called the police on me. The situation worsened when the police arrived. As if the theft and false accusation weren't already enough, I found myself struggling to explain the situation. Even after it was clear that her so-called friends had taken advantage of her forgetfulness about the unlocked window. It was shocking to see how Jane had managed to twist the situation. However, to my surprise, the police quickly saw through her deception. They warned me against finding roommates on CRAIGSLIST in the future. Recognizing her instability, they noted down the items that had been stolen and then left me to deal with the aftermath. Driven by anger and a sense of betrayal, I confronted Jane. I yelled at her for the chaos she had caused in my life, pointing my finger at her face in a fit of rage. Just as my rant reached its peak, to my horror, the police entered. I was worried that things had taken a turn for the worse. Fortunately, the police had already figured it out. They shared my annoyance and were aware of the manipulation taking place. They noted the stolen goods and then left me alone after a brief conversation with Jane. In a desperate attempt to reclaim what was rightfully mine, I devised an improvised plan. I lied to the burglars, concocting a story about hidden cameras in the apartment. I threatened to withhold the video from the police if they didn't return my stolen property. "Listen, I've got everything on tape. You better return what you took, or the cops will have a field day," I said with a confidence I didn't entirely feel. Amazingly, my bluff worked. I was able to reclaim my belongings without further assistance from the police, thanks to my sheer determination. Although it was a terrifying experience, it also taught me a valuable lesson. Looking for roommates on Craigslist isn't always the best idea. I immediately took Jane's key, packed all her belongings into a single box, and left it outside the apartment. I resolved to be more vigilant in the future, never to ignore the warning signs, and to prioritize my safety. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, and using Craigslist to find a roommate, exercise caution. Not everyone is as they appear to be, and sometimes the real horrors are hidden behind a seemingly trustworthy online advertisement, waiting just around the corner. I am a man in my 30s hailing from a small town, and I have a chilling tale to share about my encounter with the unpredictable world of Craigslist. It all started when I decided to sell my US television set on the website. The TV was nothing extraordinary, just a modest entertainment center, but I thought it might catch someone's interest. Little did I know that the simple act would spiral into a horrifying ordeal that still sends shivers down my spine. The first sign of life from the other side of the screen was a message from a woman who seemed quite keen on the entertainment center. "Hi there. I saw your TV listing. Is it still available?" she messaged. We exchanged a few messages, and soon enough, we had arranged a time for her to come over and inspect the item. The plan seemed straightforward enough. We agreed on 7 o'clock, and I made sure everything was ready for her visit. As the clock neared 7, I waited with anticipation. But as the minutes ticked by, there was no sign of her. Confused, I decided to text her to see if she was still planning to come. After what felt like an eternity, I finally received a response just when I was about to call it a night. "So sorry. Can I still come over?" she apologized. Being a night owl, I thought, why not? Let's give it a shot, even though it was already 10 p.m. As you can imagine, the 10 minutes she said she would take to get there turned into 20. I began to question whether I was wasting my time when another text message arrived. "Just pulling up now," she messaged. My curiosity overcame me, even though she said she was just pulling up. A mixture of anticipation and caution filled me as I made my way to the front door. My heart skipped a beat as I approached the door. Not only was the woman there in my driveway, but her car also had 4 or 5 additional occupants. "Who are they?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. "They all want to see the entertainment center," the woman explained in a casual manner. "I don't know about you, but having a bunch of strangers break into my house wasn't in the plan." I firmly informed her that only she could enter to check out the TV. I wasn't even sure I wanted her to enter my home at that point. "I'm sorry, but I can't allow everyone in," I stated firmly. Despite her insistence, she might understand, so I told her no. I was surprised to see the woman lose her composure and become angry at my choice. "This is ridiculous. You're not being very accommodating," she snapped. She had the goal to accuse me of not living up to my Christian obligations. Let me tell you, putting myself in danger wasn't part of being a good Christian. As you might imagine, I locked all the doors because I was uneasy and went inside my house for protection. With my heart racing, I couldn't help but glance out the window. One of the guys who was with her made the odd decision to relieve himself at the end of my driveway, which made things even more bizarre. It looked like a scene from a horror film throughout. They eventually got back in the car, and with a screech of tires, they all drove off into the night. I couldn't believe it. It was like a nightmare had abruptly ended when I considered what might have occurred if I had allowed them inside. I couldn't help but shudder. I learned a valuable lesson about using Craigslist to transact with strangers after that terrifying incident. I made sure to exercise extra caution and follow my gut instincts going forward. Simply put, You can never be sure who is lurking in the online world shadows on the other side of that screen. Therefore, keep my story in mind. If you ever find yourself selling something on Craigslist, be wary, establish boundaries, and resist pressure to jeopardize your safety. After all, it's preferable to be branded a bad Christian than to experience a real-life horror story. I was born and raised in a small town, a place where everyone knew everyone else, and life was simple and predictable. However, life had other plans for me, and I found myself moving to the big city, a place teeming with life, noise, and endless possibilities. The transition was not easy, and I had to make several adjustments to fit into my new environment. One of these adjustments involved selling my car, a reliable 6-year-old Honda Accord that had been my faithful companion through many adventures. The decision to sell my car was not an easy one. It was more than just a vehicle. It was a symbol of my past life, a life that was quickly fading into the background as I embraced the hustle and bustle of city life. However, I realized that owning a car in the city was more of a burden than a convenience. With public transportation readily available and parking spaces hard to come by, I decided to let go of my beloved car. I posted an ad on Craigslist hoping to find a buyer who would appreciate my car as much as I did. Soon, I was contacted by a man named Mark. "Hello, I'm Mark. I saw your ad about the car. Is it still available?" he asked over the phone. He was in his early 40s and seemed like a decent person. He told me that he was interested in buying the car for his daughter, who was about to start college. We had a few phone conversations, and everything seemed to be going well. When Mark came for the test drive, he was friendly and showed genuine interest in the car. He inspected every nook and cranny, asked questions, and seemed satisfied with the car's condition. We negotiated the price, and after some back and forth, we agreed on a fair amount. Mark asked me to hold the car for him for 2 days while he arranged for the payment, and I agreed. 2 days later, we met again in a familiar neighborhood. Mark was as friendly as before, and everything seemed to be going according to plan. We took the car for one last test drive, and then it was time for the payment. Mark handed me a cashier's check from Chase Bank. "I suggest we go to the bank together to cash the check and transfer the title," I suggested. But Mark's demeanor suddenly changed. He became hesitant and seemed nervous. We were parked by the side of the street, discussing the bank visit, when Mark asked to inspect the car one more time. I agreed, and as we both stepped out of the car, Mark suddenly jumped back into the driver's seat and sped off, leaving me standing on the sidewalk shocked and confused. Panic surged through me as I watched my car disappear down the street. I turned to the bystanders pleading for someone to call 911. A kind stranger dialed the emergency number, and I quickly explained the situation to the dispatcher. As I was talking, a police car pulled up nearby, and I flagged them down. I got into the back of the police car and gave them all the information I could remember about my car and the man who had stolen it. The officers reassured me that they would do everything they could to find my car, but unfortunately, the thief managed to get away. In the following weeks, I had to deal with the aftermath of the theft. I filed a police report, contacted my insurance company, and tried to come to terms with the loss of my car. I was frustrated and angry with myself for letting my guard down and allowing this to happen. 3 months later, just as I was about to receive compensation from my insurance company, I received a call from the police. They had found my car 3 states away. It turned out that Mark had been part of a car theft ring. He had stolen my car and sold it to another man who had then sold it to an unsuspecting buyer. The police arranged for all of us to meet at the station. The man who had bought my car from the thief agreed to return the car to me, and the thief agreed to refund the money to the buyer. In the end, I did receive compensation for my car, but the whole ordeal left me feeling stressed and demoralized. Despite this experience, I continued to buy and sell cars on Craigslist. However, I learned a valuable lesson from this incident. Now, I always make sure to take a photo of the buyer's driver's license at the beginning of every meeting. This experience taught me the importance of being cautious and vigilant, especially when dealing with strangers. I used to frequently purchase iPhones, video game systems, TVs, and many other items on Facebook Marketplace, then resell them on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace to make a profit. I've been doing this for years as a side job, and I've learned a lot along the way. Hello, I'm Mark. I saw your ad about the car. Is it still available? I usually try to resell iPhones because they seem to have the highest profit margin. On one occasion, I got an iPhone X for $155. This was over a year ago, so it was a very good deal. You'd be surprised how low the prices you can negotiate from these people if you try. Most people might reject such ridiculous offers, but many just want quick cash, and they'll sell it to the first person who contacts them. So I took full advantage of it. Anyway, I had listed that iPhone X for sale at $300, and I wrote in the description that I would consider best offers. Usually this phone sells quickly, so I wasn't too worried about rejecting offers less than $300 because most of the time I could sell it within a week at the original price if I just waited. Just an hour after I posted the listing, someone contacted me who was interested in the phone. Hi, I'm interested in the iPhone. Can we meet tomorrow? They asked a few questions and planned to meet the next day in the late afternoon after they got off work. A few hours before the meeting, they messaged me and asked if I could come directly to their house instead of meeting at Walmart like we had planned before. I was immediately wary of that request, but I still asked them for their address so I could put it into the GPS app on my phone to see how far it was. They were only about 20 minutes away, which wasn't too far actually, and they were willing to pay the full $300 for the phone. So I decided to go for it. I told them I could deliver the phone to their house, and that was fine. I just told them to let me know what time I should come. They thanked me excessively and kept telling me how I was a lifesaver and how grateful they were to me for helping them. They then asked if I could come at 7:30 p.m. and they would definitely be home by then. I agreed, but I didn't like that they wanted to meet so late. I had to get up for work the next morning at 5 a.m., and I like to have some alone time at home and get some time to myself before I have to sleep. When they initially said we could meet after they got off work, they said late afternoon. So I expected it to be between 4:30 to 6 p.m., maybe at the latest, but I still went along with it because I really wanted to sell the phone. This woman didn't live in a neighborhood. She lived on a street off the main road in town. She definitely had neighbors, but the area had a somewhat rural feel to it. Around 7:20 p.m., I left because I wanted to make sure she would be there when I arrived. I told her when I was on my way and that I would arrive in about 20 minutes. When I arrived and knocked on the door, my anxiety tripled, waiting for an answer. It was starting to get dark, so that didn't help much. When the woman opened the door, she introduced herself as Sabrina. She invited me in and introduced me to her husband, who was sitting on the couch in the living room. Almost immediately, they started mocking me, making fun of my clothes and appearance, and even tried to pass it off as a joke. But I sensed strong passive aggression almost immediately after I walked in. I had a strange feeling about these people. There was something very wrong about them. I thought Sabrina might be on drugs because she was acting weird. And she looked like someone who was using something. And I'm not talking about weed. I'm talking about serious hard drugs. Her eyes looked sunken, and she was pale as a corpse. She was definitely on something. Trust me. She just wasn't acting right. Not like a normal person. Anyway, she was rude and somewhat pushy while I was there and argued with her husband about how much she was willing to pay for the phone. I let them look at the phone. Sabrina wanted to put her SIM card into the phone before buying it because she wanted to make sure the phone would work. She then started complaining about a small crack on the phone, even though I stated in the description that there was a small crack, and it was fully visible in the photos I took. She started getting upset and said that I was trying to scam her. She said she wouldn't pay more than $200 for it. I immediately said no and asked for the phone back, constantly trying to negotiate, and I said that I wouldn't accept less than $250. I made it very clear that I wouldn't accept anything less than that. Not liking that at all, she took her SIM card back from the phone and literally threw it towards me. And I mean, she really threw it at me like really hard. The phone hit me directly in the face and then fell to the floor after bouncing from my head to the hardwood floor. "What's wrong with you?" I asked. Then she ran off somewhere. I think it was her bedroom. I started screaming and crying hysterically. Her husband tried to calm me down and gave me $100 so I wouldn't call the police. I accepted the $100 and I didn't call. One day, I was browsing CRAIGSLIST out of sheer boredom. I wasn't looking for anything specific, and at that time I didn't even know that people used CRAIGSLIST for dating or meeting new people and making friends or anything like that. But after doing some research, I found out that it definitely exists. I was very bored and quite lonely, so I started looking through the listings. There was a guy named Tom who was very handsome. He said he was 32 years old. I myself was 34 years old at the time, so we were around the same age. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I'm a very laid-back person, so I usually just go with the flow of whatever happens. He had a good aura and seemed like a genuine person, and he also wasn't too pushy, so I wasn't too worried about the scam situation. He was clearly attractive though, and I liked everything about his profile, so I gave him a chance. "Hi, I'm Tom. Nice to meet you." We started talking, and eventually, he got my phone number. We talked for a few days through text messages and calls. This also turned out to be positive, because he lived less than 10 minutes from where I lived. He asked if I wanted to go out that weekend to the nearest bar on Saturday. I said yes, and we continued to talk. Everything progressed quickly, and we very quickly moved from friendly conversation to very flirtatious conversation. On our first date at the bar, when we met on Saturday, everything went well. We talked casually, got a bit drunk, had good food, and I had a lot of fun. I definitely liked this guy, and I had feelings for him. Then, towards the end of the night, just before we were about to part ways, I got a message from a random number saying, and I quote, "Stay away from my man. You better not be there with him when I get there." I was very confused. I showed him the message I received. He dismissed it as if it were irrelevant, and he didn't know what or who it was. Then he became very awkward and started acting suspicious, like he wanted to leave right away. Just before we were about to part ways, his girlfriend showed up. "Yes," I said, his girlfriend. He had a girlfriend this whole time. I was quite angry, and I had been drinking, so I didn't hold back from this woman at all. She started screaming at him and calling me various names and saying rude things to me. I started shouting back at her, and I guess she didn't like it because she actually took off her shoe and threw it in my direction. Then she started attacking me with her bag and hitting me, pulling my hair, and beating me up badly. "What are you doing with my man, you homewrecker?" I tried to defend myself by grabbing her hair, but before I could, I fell to the ground and hit my head on the concrete. I had to go to the hospital because I was almost unconscious. That night was a big mistake. I still can't believe I was ever in that situation in the first place. I'm a very calm, friendly, and polite person, so the whole thing was very out of character for me, if you will. I didn't even know how she found out about us, or even how she knew we were at the bar together. I'm glad she found out before I got too involved with this guy and got more heartache than I already got. She eventually got arrested that night and charged with assault. I walked away without any charges or time in jail at all. I just went away with a severe concussion and a big reminder of why I'll never meet random strangers from the internet again. I now have a fiancé, and we've been together for over 5 years, and we're getting married next year. We plan to start a family soon, and I've never been happier. This is just one of the stories I like to tell when warning people about the dangers of the internet and meeting unknown strangers. You never know what someone's true intentions could be. Things could have been much worse for me that night.